Aba, imaba. I'm 32 years old, and this is my story. It's not a story I tell often, mostly because it's complicated. And it's real. It starts on a sweltering summer day, 17 years ago, at a dusty rest stop in the middle of nowhere, just off Interstate 40. That day, my parents left me. Not because they hated me, not intentionally in the way you might imagine a parent abandoning a child. They'd tell you it was an accident. And maybe in a twisted, detached sort of way it was. But what happened next? That wasn't an accident. That was a choice. My choice. A choice that led me to where I am today, a self-made woman, a business owner, a millionaire. And I never called them. To truly understand why I never called, you have to understand a little about my childhood. It wasn't overtly terrible. There wasn't abuse in the dramatic sense. It was the slow erosion. A constant feeling of being less important, less loved, less seen. My parents, they were good people, I guess, in their own way, but they were always preoccupied. My dad was a workaholic, always chasing the next promotion, the next big client. My mom, she was caught up in social appearances, in what the neighbors thought, in maintaining this pristine image of a perfect family that just wasn't real. I was a quiet kid, an observer, and I often felt like an afterthought, a prop in their carefully constructed life. Dinners were silent, or filled with their discussions about work or community events. My opinions, my struggles, my very presence often felt unnoticed. The summer I turned 15, we were driving from our home in Ohio to visit my aunt in Arizona. It was one of those classic American road trips, endless highways, cheap motels, lukewarm soda from a cooler. The air conditioning in our old minivan was barely cutting it against the August heat, and the tension in the car was palpable, as it often was. My parents had been bickering for hours about directions, about money, about something my younger brother, Leo, had done that morning. Leo, bless his heart, was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, even when he clearly did. I was the eldest, the responsible one, the one who was supposed to just cope. We pulled into a rest stop somewhere in Oklahoma, the kind with a single gas station, a small convenience store, and a row of desolate, overheated picnic tables. The asphalt shimmered with heat. Bugs buzzed lazily around overflowing trash cans. My mom declared we needed a bathroom break and urged us all out of the van. "Ava, take Leo to the bathroom," she commanded, not really asking. "And then grab us some waters from the store. Your dad, and I will fill up the tank." I remember the smell of stale gasoline and sun-baked concrete. Leo, always a whirlwind of energy, sprinted towards the men's room, and I followed, trudging along, already tired of the trip and the constant feeling of being on edge. After he was done, I walked him to the convenience store. I picked out 4 bottles of water, paid with the $20 bill my mom had given me, and told Leo to wait by the store's entrance while I went to the women's room. When I came out, he was gone. A familiar pang of annoyance shot through me. Leo, always wandering off. I figured he'd gone back to the van. I clutched the plastic bag with the water bottles, squinting against the harsh sun, scanning the row of parked cars. Our minivan, a faded blue relic, wasn't there. My heart gave a little lurch, a skip, then a slow, heavy thud. Panic. A hot, sharp wave of it. I told myself, they must have parked somewhere else. Maybe Dad needed to check the tires or something. I walked up and down the parking lot, my eyes darting between the vehicles, each one a different shade of unfamiliarity. The minutes stretched, slow and thick like molasses. The sun beat down, turning my scalp itchy under my hair. My palms were sweaty. Where was Leo? Then I saw him. He was standing by the gas pumps, next to a black SUV, talking animatedly to my dad. My mom was already in the passenger seat. My heart leaped with relief, then slammed down with a cold, hard realization. "They're leaving," I called out, a desperate, reedy sound that barely escaped my throat. "Mom, Dad." They didn't hear me. Or maybe they didn't listen. My dad opened Leo's door. Leo climbed in. Dad shut the door. He walked around to the driver's side, got in, and started the engine. My mom glanced over her shoulder, just for a second, her eyes sweeping past me without registering. Her expression was bored, impatient. Then she turned back around. The minivan pulled out, slowly at first, then picked up speed, merging onto the highway. The plastic bag of water bottles slipped from my numb fingers, clattering to the ground, the bottles rolling away into the dusty gravel. I just stood there, rooted to the spot, watching the faded blue speck disappear into the horizon. For a long moment, I felt nothing but a profound emptiness. Then, a crushing wave of despair, followed by a surge of white-hot anger. This wasn't the first time. Not abandonment, no. But this feeling of being forgotten, of being an inconvenience, of being overlooked, that was a constant in my life. It was a familiar ache, but this time, it was amplified 1,000-fold. They really left. They didn't even notice. I picked up one of the water bottles, twisting the cap off with trembling hands. I took a long, desperate gulp. My phone was in my backpack, which was in the van. Even if it weren't, I wouldn't have known their cell numbers by heart, and they certainly wouldn't have known mine. All I had was the crumpled $20 bill from my mom and the clothes on my back. The initial fear was overwhelming. What was I going to do? Where was I going to go? I imagined calling the police, crying, telling them my parents accidentally left me. I imagined their voices, full of apology, full of excuses. "Oh, Ava, we're so sorry. We thought you were with Leo. We'll be right back." And then, the ride in the silent car, the underlying tension, the fresh sting of being forgotten again. The quiet blame in their eyes, as if I was the one who caused the trouble by not being where I was supposed to be. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. A cold, defiant resolve solidified in my gut. No more being overlooked. No more being an afterthought. This was it. This was the line in the sand. If they could forget me, then I could forget them. I would not call. I would not give them the satisfaction of their superficial apologies. I would not go back to being the invisible daughter. The $20 felt like a fortune and a pittance all at once. I walked back into the convenience store, my mind racing. I was 15. No ID, no contact information, just a wad of cash. I bought a cheap map of the state, a tattered paper map, and a pack of granola bars. I unfolded the map on a sticky table, my finger tracing the lines, looking for the nearest town, the nearest escape from this desolate spot. The closest dot on the map that looked like more than a crossroads was a place called Harmony Creek, about 10 miles east. It sounded idyllic, but I knew it wouldn't be. Harmony Creek was going to be my first step into the unknown. I couldn't stay at the rest stop. Sooner or later, someone would notice a lone teenager wandering around, and questions would start. And I didn't want to answer questions. I wanted to disappear. I started walking. The asphalt burned through the thin soles of my sneakers. The sun was a relentless hammer on my head. Cars whizzed by, their drivers faceless blurs behind tinted windows. Each one a reminder of the family I no longer had. I held my head high, though my insides churned with fear. I had to look purposeful, like I knew exactly where I was going. Like this was all part of a plan. After what felt like an eternity, a beat-up pickup truck pulled over a few hundred yards ahead of me. An elderly woman with kind eyes and a face weathered by the sun leaned out the window. "Honey, you all right?" Walking all alone in this heat. My heart pounded. This was it. My first test. I had to lie. "Yes, ma'am, I'm fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My car broke down a few miles back, and I'm just trying to get to Harmony Creek. My grandma lives there." It was a clumsy lie, but it was all I could think of. She looked at me, a long, assessing look that made my stomach clench. Then, to my surprise, she smiled. "Well, hop in. I'm heading that way myself." Relief washed over me, so potent it almost brought tears to my eyes. I climbed into the passenger seat, the upholstery hot and sticky. The truck smelled of stale cigarettes and something vaguely floral. "Thank you," I whispered genuinely. She introduced herself as Martha. She didn't ask too many questions, just offered me a lukewarm bottle of water from her cooler and talked about the weather. I mumbled vague answers, my mind still reeling, trying to process the enormity of what I was doing. When she dropped me off at the edge of Harmony Creek, a small town with one main street and a blinking traffic light, I thanked her again and walked away quickly before she could change her mind or ask about my grandma. Harmony Creek wasn't harmonious. It was dusty and quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and a new face stuck out like a sore thumb. I walked the main street, feeling eyes on me, judging. I found a diner, the kind with red vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner. I had maybe $18 left. I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a grilled cheese and a glass of water. I nursed it, making it last, listening to the conversations around me. People talking about crops, about church, about their kids. My stomach churned with hunger, but also with a deeper, more profound emptiness. I was completely alone. That night, I found a small, overgrown park on the edge of town. I curled up on a hard wooden bench, pulling my thin t-shirt closer against the surprisingly cool night air. The stars were brilliant, more stars than I had ever seen in my suburban backyard. Each one felt like a pinprick of loneliness in the vast, dark sky. I cried that night, silent, bitter tears that tasted of dust and regret and the crushing weight of my own decisions. But even through the tears, the defiance remained. I was not going back. The next few weeks were a blur of survival. I learned to make myself invisible. I slept in that park, or sometimes in the back of an unlocked truck, or once, terrifyingly, in an abandoned shed behind a gas station. I rationed my remaining money, buying cheap bread and peanut butter, sometimes a piece of fruit if I felt brave enough to risk stealing it. I was constantly hungry, constantly cold, constantly afraid. I knew I needed to work. But at 15, with no ID, no address, and no one to vouch for me, finding a legitimate job was impossible. I started looking for cash-under-the-table work. I knocked on doors of small businesses, offering to sweep floors, wash windows, take out trash. Most people just stared at me, a skinny, disheveled teenager, and slammed the door. But a very few took pity. My first real job was washing dishes in the back of a greasy spoon diner called Flo's Eats. Flo was a tough-looking woman with a heart of gold, hidden under layers of cynicism and grease. She didn't ask too many questions. Just told me, you want to eat, you gotta work. $10 an hour, cash at the end of the night.
No slacking.
The work was grueling. My hands were raw from the hot water and harsh detergent, my back ached, and the smell of stale food clung to me like a second skin. But at the end of each day, I had cash in my pocket and a plate of whatever leftovers Flo deemed edible. It wasn't much, but it was survival. It was dignity. It was mine. I moved from Harmony Creek after a few months, realizing it was too small, too stifling, too many eyes. I found another truck driver, a quiet man this time, who took me a few hundred miles north to a slightly larger city in Kansas. I invented a new story for him, one where I was going to meet my older sister. He didn't pry. He just nodded and dropped me off at a bus station. In that city, I learned to navigate the underground economy of homeless youth. I learned where the free meals were, where the safest places to sleep were, and who to trust. I got a job cleaning motel rooms, again, cash under the table. It was isolating work, often thankless, but it gave me a little more stability. I rented a tiny, rundown room in a boarding house, sharing a bathroom with 3 other people. It was noisy, cramped, and smelled faintly of mildew, but it was a roof over my head. My own roof. I knew this couldn't be my forever. I remembered my mom's constant emphasis on education, even if she rarely helped me with my homework. It felt like a lifetime ago, but the message had stuck. I needed a GED. I found a local community center that offered free classes for adults. I was still only 16, but I lied about my age, adding a few years to sound more credible. The classes were tough. My brain felt rusty, my concentration scattered from months of survival mode. But I pushed through, driven by a quiet desperation to escape the cycle I was in. My days became a relentless routine. Wake up before dawn, clean motel rooms, rush to GED classes, grab a quick, cheap dinner, study in my tiny room until I fell asleep, exhausted. I devoured textbooks, not just for the classes, but because they offered a window into a different life, a different world. History, literature, science, it was all fascinating, especially now that it felt like my choice to learn, not something forced upon me. During my GED classes, I met Mr. Henderson. He was an older gentleman, a retired high school principal who volunteered to teach English. He noticed me, really noticed me. He saw the fire in my eyes, the quiet determination. One day, after class, he asked me about my plans. I was guarded at first, but something about his gentle persistence made me open up, just a little. I told him I wanted more than just a GED. I wanted a real life, a life where I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder. He became my unofficial mentor. He helped me navigate the community college application process. He wrote a glowing letter of recommendation, despite my lack of transcripts or parental support. He even discreetly helped me find a scholarship for low-income students. He told me, "Ava, you have a mind like a steel trap and a spirit like a lion. Don't waste it." Those words, from a kind stranger, resonated more deeply than any praise I'd ever received from my parents. I enrolled in community college, taking evening classes while still working my cleaning job during the day. I started with general studies, but quickly gravitated towards anything related to computers. In my teenage years, my parents had always limited my screen time, viewing it as a distraction. Now, I saw it as a tool, a door to opportunities. I took a basic coding class, and it was like a light switch flipped on in my brain. The logic, the problem-solving, the creation, it all clicked. I spent hours in the college computer lab, teaching myself more, devouring online tutorials, experimenting. I realized I had a knack for it. At 19, I landed my first real job. Not under the table, not cleaning. It was an entry-level position at a small local web design firm. The pay was barely more than I was making cleaning, but the experience was priceless. I learned everything I could, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. I stayed late, volunteered for extra projects, absorbed every piece of information my colleagues and boss would share. I was often the first one in, the last one out. I was driven by a hunger I couldn't ignore, a fear of ever going back to that rest stop, that park bench, that empty feeling. My parents, I sometimes wondered if they ever searched for me, if they ever filed a missing person report, if they even noticed I was gone, really gone, until days later. The thought would send a cold knot of resentment through me. But mostly I didn't think about them. My focus was entirely on building my own future, brick by painful brick. I had to. It was a matter of survival, not just physical, but emotional. I had no safety net, no fallback. Just me. As I gained experience, I started seeing gaps in the market. Many small businesses around me had terrible, outdated websites, or no online presence at all. They didn't understand digital marketing, SEO, social media. They were struggling to keep up. I saw an opportunity. My boss at the web design firm was good, but he was stuck in traditional methods. I started freelancing on the side, building simple, effective websites for local businesses, helping them set up social media profiles, explaining the basics of online advertising. My clients were thrilled. Word started to spread. At 24, I took the biggest leap of faith yet. I quit my job. I had saved every penny I could, living frugally, almost obsessively. It was enough for a few months of rent and basic expenses. I started my own digital marketing agency, working out of a tiny, rented office space, just one desk, one computer, and a lot of caffeine. I called it Ascend Digital. The name was a personal mantra. The first year was brutal. Sleepless nights, constant worry about money, the overwhelming pressure of being solely responsible for my own success. I made mistakes, bad clients, failed ad campaigns, technological glitches that threatened to derail everything. There were moments when I doubted myself, when the old fear of being utterly alone would creep back in. But then I would remember that rest stop, that feeling of being abandoned, and it would fuel me. I had come too far to give up. I had built too much. I focused on my strengths, genuine connection with clients, clear communication, and delivering tangible results. I wasn't just selling websites. I was selling growth, visibility, and a path forward for small business owners who felt overwhelmed by the digital landscape. I poured my heart and soul into every project, and my clients noticed. They trusted me. They referred me. Slowly, painstakingly, Ascend Digital grew. I hired my first employee at 26, a bright, eager recent college graduate who shared my passion for helping small businesses. Then another. And another. We moved into a slightly larger office. Then another bigger one. I remember the day I signed the lease on our current office, a beautiful space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I stood there, looking out, and a wave of emotion hit me so hard it almost brought me to my knees. It wasn't just the view. It was the realization of how far I had come. From a park bench to this. The money came almost as a byproduct of the passion and hard work. I wasn't chasing wealth. I was chasing independence, security, and a sense of purpose. But the financial milestones were undeniable. The day my accountant told me my business was valued at 7 figures, that I was officially a millionaire, it felt surreal. It wasn't a sudden explosion of joy, but a deep, quiet satisfaction. A vindication. A testament to every single struggle, every tear, every sleepless night. My life now is comfortable. More than comfortable. I have a beautiful home, I drive a nice car, I travel the world. But the most valuable thing I have isn't the material possessions. It's the peace of mind. The knowledge that I built this. That I am strong, capable, and resilient. And the freedom that comes with that. People sometimes ask me if I ever think about my parents, if I ever want to reach out. And the honest answer is yes, I think about them. Especially around holidays, or when I see happy families together. There's a lingering echo of that pain, that longing for a connection that never truly existed. But the anger has faded. It's been replaced by something closer to indifference, tinged with a quiet understanding. I realize now that their accident was a symptom of a deeper neglect, a pattern of being emotionally unavailable. They weren't malicious. They were just wrapped up in their own worlds. They probably still are. And in a strange, twisted way, their leaving me was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to rely on myself, to find my own strength, to define my own family. My chosen family, my friends, my colleagues, Mr. Henderson who still checks in on me. They are the people who truly saw me, who believed in me, who lifted me up. They are my real family. I don't hold on to resentment anymore. It's too heavy to carry. I've built a life that is so far removed from that day, from that version of myself, that the connection to them feels almost like a story from another lifetime. Would I take back that day? Would I call them if I could go back in time? No. Because if I had, I wouldn't be Ava, the woman I am today. I would still be that invisible girl, waiting to be noticed, waiting to be chosen. And I chose myself. I chose a different path. And it made all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, or if you just found it interesting, please consider hitting that like button. And if you want to hear more stories of resilience, growth, and overcoming the odds, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Sharing this video with someone who might need to hear it would also mean the world to me. Until next time, take care.